Welcome to Gunners Are Us, where we are positively Arsenal.
And that we are. So here is another week.
Yep.
And it's another week of trial and tribulation. So as far as Arsenal's concerned, it is very positive. As far as the group of us, the Gunners Are Us crew, we're a little bit depleted.
We're in shambles.
Yeah. So Joe here is doing the intro with me because he can last about 2 minutes before he coughs.
Yeah.
He coughs up a lung every 2 minutes. So what he's going to do is he's doing the intro here with us. Simon is busy with the NXT AEW Tuesday night delight or whatever this is.
An absolute extravaganza.
So he is fried at the minute. So he's trying to put himself together to get a podcast over to me. That will be going in a moment. So if you are listening now, in a couple minutes, you'll be listening to Simon talk about the Arsenal Man City game. Then if you want to listen right through Simon, get to me if you want. And then I'm going to talk about Arsenal Man City, a bit of VAR, a bit of international break, what we've got coming up next week on the show. But as far as Joe is concerned,
I did that intro for a mask. That felt like a flashback. It feels like we're going back in time.
It really does. So Joe is going to be heading out shortly because I don't want to get sick because we have a wrestling show at the weekend and Joe's already sick. I don't want to feel just as sick. So, but yeah, so Simon in a couple of minutes if you want to listen to that. And then if you want to listen to me right through Simon, then it'll be me.
I just want to say, though, just because I'm not going to be here technically, I'm very happy about what happened this week.
I know. You guys enjoy Simon. Joe, go get into bed.
Hello, Gunners Are Us listeners. It's me, Simon Miller, coming at you from a different life. Mostly because, not that you need to know about what I'm up to, I totally forgot that AEW and NXT were running head-to-head on the day that we usually record, or on the previous day. So it is now almost 1 o'clock, and I'm still trying to get this ridiculous video together. But I did not want to miss another episode completely, so I did just want to jolt in and give you my thoughts about the Arsenal versus Man City game. Now, it's kind of difficult because in the aftermath, and I get it, this is just football, this is just what happens, but a lot of non-Arsenal fans were like, oh, Arsenal fluked it because the goal was deflected and Manchester City were better and Rodri wasn't playing and De Bruyne is injured, blah, blah, blah. And look, all of that is true, but Saka didn't play for us. And we have other injuries as well. But moreover, I don't think that's how football works. Ultimately, 3 points is what matters. And I get it, you're always going to throw, shade at other teams. That's what football is all about, like I say, just repeating myself now. But given that Arsenal hadn't beaten Manchester City in like 8 years, I know the Community Shield was there, but that doesn't really count because it's competitive to a point, but that actually does have an asterisk to it. But throughout a season, players are going to be injured, players are going to be suspended, and classic, right? You can only beat the team that is put in front of you, and that's what Arsenal did. And it means going into this international break, I know that Tottenham are top as well, and more power to them. They've been playing great. Sometimes you just got to hold your hands up. But it means Arsenal go into the second international break undefeated, top of the league, and with a victory over Man City under their belt. And that, to me, can only build confidence, and it can only right some of the wrongs that did happen last year when we did capitulate a little bit. And I would probably argue that City were the better team, but they only had 4 shots. I don't even think it was 4 shots on target. I can't remember now, but it was only 4 shots total. Maybe some of them were on target and maybe some of them weren't. And we still got the victory. And you can go through any season and you can find other stories, be it City, Liverpool, Man United back in the day, the Arsenal team back in the day, Chelsea, even Leicester, I'm sure, had a few things like this. So I don't like looking at it that way. And I just think being able to walk away with a victory should do the world of good for the mentality of the Arsenal players. Because look, hold my hands up once again. In that first half, we were terrified of Manchester City, even more so because Raya decided that he was going to have a little bit of a wibble. And we talked about it a couple of weeks ago. I don't want to say I'm more of a Ramsdale guy, because that's not fair. But right now, given the last couple of games where we have seen that from Raya, it kind of feels to me like Arteta should bring Ramsdale back into the mix, as he said he was going to. I now don't believe that's a real thing, which is fine. I get it. It's all gamesmanship, and it's all to do with management. But I totally think that Raya will be our number one going forward. And if that's the case, then I want to support him too. But I do think him, some of his passes were a little bit off, and that did send shockwaves through the team. But look, I don't want to be this guy. This is like being a parody of myself. But we are going to have ups and we are going to have downs. And in that down moment, if we can refuse to concede, and again, Arsenal aren't very good at keeping clean sheets, so that's something to look at. But if you can stop conceding and you can get a goal, even in the last few minutes, even via deflection, even via whatever it is, and put those 3 points on the board, then you're probably going to be in better contention to win a title at the end of the season. And I still totally believe that Arsenal are still in second gear at the moment. I think give them a few more weeks, and we could see a completely different team, especially because today and over the last couple of days, we are being linked with Ivan Toney and potentially a move in January, which actually could win us the championship. Because look, I love Eddie Nketiah, but he has had his chances and he's not putting the ball in the back of the net. I think Gabriel Jesus, even though he doesn't score enough goals, I think he offers... Put it like this, if you bring in a proper old-fashioned number 9 who does get a bunch of goals, I think Jesus offers something different, so he could still start, as opposed to Nketiah, who I do think is a goal machine. And look, I still love Eddie, but look, it's just not clicking. And if Arteta is willing to do that with the goalkeeper situation, then you really have to look across the front line and be like, we're just not scoring enough goals. And Ivan Toney... he is a bit of an Alan Smith or a bit of an Ian Wright, whoever you want to bring in. He's going to hang around that box and he's going to get you at least 12 to 15 goals a season, which is what we're lacking. To the point, 60 million, 70 million, 80 million, I totally think he's worth it. And that could be the game changer. Now, of course, around that time, Rodri's obviously going to be back. De Bruyne is probably going to be back. City will probably spend again. And Haaland, he's not having a good run at the moment, so he'll come good and score 79 goals like it's nothing. But right now, on the 11th of October, as I do record this, I think we're in a very good position. I think it was a very self-assured performance in that second half to come back out after all of the foibles and make sure that we did deliver. So yeah, I'm taking all the negative Nancy stuff and I'm throwing it out the window. And look, if you put a gun to my head, do I still think Man City will win the league? I do. Maybe that's me being a little bit pessimistic, but I still do think they're that good. And also, I think the title race is going to be much harder this year. I think Liverpool look great. Even with 9 men, they look pretty damn good. I do think Tottenham will fall away, but that doesn't mean they're not going to have a better season. Newcastle, can't count them out. Manchester United, I do think you can count out as well as Chelsea, but again, they will come next year. So it's probably a three-way race between Man City, Liverpool, and Arsenal. But that's why we need to get these victories. Like when we go to take on Liverpool, it's going to be even harder than it was last year. And there will be a few screw-ups too. Maybe we lose to Luton at Kenilworth Road. Maybe a Brentford beat us, a Brighton. There's all these threats up and down the league. So I'm just happy that we did get 3 points. And I'm just happy that we seem to be in good shape, especially because we can only grow from here. Right. I am now going to get lost in more professional wrestling nonsense, but love the guys, love you, love everybody, and I'll be back probably soon.
So you would have just heard Simon and Simon's opinions on the Arsenal-Man City game. I haven't heard them, in all transparency. I've just been sat getting ready to do mine, and I've sent Joe back to bed. So not sure what Simon's talks, but I'm sure he's talks about maybe the red card and the overall win and the fact that this is such a big kind of curse-lifting win, if you will. So I'm going to kind of break it down as we go, but I think we'll start off with the VAR because we joked when we started the podcast that every week we're going to talk about Havertz, every week we're going to talk about VAR, and I think we're going to do it again because it's rare, isn't it? Because obviously we talked last week about the Tottenham versus Liverpool situation with the VAR and the fact that we wanted the transparency of what they were talking about, how they came to that decision, those kind of things, which is understandable. And then we heard it and it was awful. The organization just seemed bad. And then literally you'd expect a week later, Sunday Night Football, there's a VAR decision that they have to talk about. And again, because we ended up winning, I think it's one of those situations where people aren't really talking about it as much because it didn't influence the game in the end, which is great. The fact that it didn't, because the worst thing in the world is when you lose and you had a bad decision. And this game was an odd one for it, because I will get into that. The fact that I felt weird during the game. Joe feels the same way, but it feels different. And I will get to that after we talk about the VAR. But the decision was a Kovacic tackle on Odegaard. And in real time, I must admit, I just saw it through the back. I didn't even think it was a yellow. I didn't kind of think anything. I just thought, it's a foul. And then that first replay showed, and I think everyone did the exact same thing because I've watched like the Goldbridge reaction videos to the game. Just a couple others. I can't remember the other guys. The 4 guys. Who are they? I forget their name. Premier. I don't know. I can't remember their name. I watched those and they all kind of did the same thing. No one really reacted to the original foul. They just sort of, whatever. And then that first replay, you just instantly think that's a red card. Like he's come through the back of him, studs up over the ball. It's probably like an inch or two above the ankle, so it's a decent height, and it kind of rolls his ankle. So you think, you're putting a player in jeopardy, as they say, and you just thought, that might actually be a red. But you don't. I don't think we all jumped to like, it has to be a red. We just thought it might be a red. In all fairness to the refs, but then the more you watch the replay, and this is the issue that I think Jamie Carragher had, which was when they send them to the screen, they send them to the screen with not the whole picture. So what they should do is send him over and they watch the whole play first in real time. Then they show him replay, then they show him slow-mo or any stills. Instead, what they do is they send him over and they show him the still straight away. So they're going to have instantly in their head that is a red card. Because if they did send him over, similar to what they've done with Curtis Jones and things like that, the first thing he sees is Kovacic's foot on Odegaard's ankle and it's bent over. I think he instantly think, oh, it's a red card. In this situation, they never even sent him to the screen, which I think is wrong. I think that's the wrong decision. I think I've spoken to Man United fans, Liverpool fans, even Tottenham fans, and they've all kind of said, like, that is just such a bad decision. I don't understand. And I think the issue comes with consistency, because I think if that tackle was the first tackle of the season and we hadn't seen any other bad decisions or good decisions, whatever, I think people would have said, yeah, he hasn't tried to go in and hurt him. He's tried to nick the ball and he's caught him. And I think we'd all be fine with like a yellow, I think. But because we've seen so many bad decisions like Gusto for Chelsea, Curtis Jones for Liverpool, there were reds, which, for example, Gusto's one is almost identical to this one. Whereas this one's actually from behind, so it's kind of worse. And he got red, and we've heard the audio now of that, which I don't necessarily disagree with it, because it still sounds chaotic. I think it's too chaotic. But again, they showed the still. They showed the still of the ankle, those kind of things. The thing with this one that's kind of an issue is he doesn't give it. And again, on the field, I think in real time, the ref, I think I'd probably give the same. I would say it's a booking, because you don't get the benefit of seeing the replays. That's the point of VAR. But the idea is that people in VAR should be your eyes for that and go, you've missed one there. That's probably a red. You should probably go check that. That's, I think, common sense. I think that is exactly what should have happened. You've missed something there. Did you want to go see it again? Instead, they said, nah, I think your decision's correct, which, as anyone has played football, if you've watched that replay and said, nah, that's a good decision. And I know that the letter of the law is if it's a clear and obvious error, which they're saying this wasn't a clear and obvious error because he saw the tackle and felt it was a yellow card on the field. But how could you watch that replay and not have him at least check it? Seems a bit odd. But again, when it happened in real time, and like I said, I'll get to the way I felt during this game, I kind of went, oh, okay, whatever. And then we carried on, just because I think it's almost getting used to how bad the decisions are at times is kind of made us not flat, but you kind of just go, oh, okay, whatever. But the fact that only a couple of minutes later, he almost does the exact same thing. And he's on a booking, and you could see the ref instantly shakes his head like from the get-go, because he doesn't want to deal with the pressure that's about to come from the players, from the fans, from everything that he knows is going to come after the game. So he makes that decision instantly. And I think what's bad about it, but also you can't really complain, is from the angle he's at, he does see the tackle, but it looks like he slides in and kind of, when someone clears a ball and they kind of touch their toe, and it's always the guy starts screaming. I think he thinks that's happened. He doesn't realize that Kovacic just slid in by the side of him, but also reached around and his studs have hit his ankle. So it's actually a bad tackle again. I think from his angle, it just looks like a slide, and it hardly touches him. And that's probably why he instantly thought, no, I'm not going to ruin the game here, because that was nothing, which I kind of understand, which is me trying to be as, understanding as possible. And also when you think about it, VAR can't tell him to go look at it because it wasn't a red card. If anything, it's a booking. So they can't tell him to check it. So as long as he's made that decision on the field in his head, I don't want to ruin the game, he's kind of done what was correct for him. But then the totality of the whole thing, the first one is, 9 out of 10 are red. That is a red. The second one is a booking. But when you actually see the flow of it all, I can kind of see what's gone wrong. But again, the problem is I'm looking at it through the lens of what VAR's allowed to do, which is what goes back to last week, which was once the play restarted, VAR's not allowed to stop the game again. All these little rules they put in place to just remove common sense is just bizarre, because every week they decide what is a red, what isn't, what is a handball, what isn't, what is a penalty, what isn't. That changes every single week. But what doesn't change is if we completely mess up a call, we're not going to stop the game again because that's our rules. And that just seems bizarre that that's what their hard stance is, that part. It's not the actual ruling of the game. It's the ruling of how we do the rules. So, for example, in the fairness of that game, they should have been down to 10 men on 36 minutes. That every human that's watched football can see that and be like, it should have been a red. He got away with it. Then he's gone and done something that's like a 3/4 yellow, like a yellow to a red because of studs on the ankle. How he stayed on the field when he's, if his XG for red cards was 1.5, he ended up with 0.5. And it's just, that's kind of bizarre. In the end, again, like I said, it hasn't affected the game. But they have now, I think Howard Webb spoke on behalf of, I'm gonna mess this up, the PGMOL. I think I got it. And he said basically he believes that, is it Martin Oliver? Martin Oliver? I think it's something Oliver. Martin Oliver. That sounds right. He didn't want to impact a big game and felt he didn't want to ruin the game, essentially. That's what you're saying. But this is the same referee that last year sent off Martinelli for trying to block a throw and then pulling the guy down for 2 bookable offences in one phase, which has never happened in football before, never will happen again. And that was on like the 50th minute. And we ended up winning that game at Wolves 1-0. But if we're talking about that this ref doesn't want to impact games in a negative way when he doesn't have to, he went out of his way last year to do something that has never been done before and never will be done before, done again, to get us down to 10 men. And again, I'm not a conspiracy. I'm sure there's people going, oh, maybe you're a conspiracy. It's not a conspiracy. But what is wrong is that you can't say that that's what he wants to do when he proved last year that is not what he wants to do. So I get it, but I think it was Merson might have said it. He didn't want to impact this game. It's too big a game. But a week ago, one of the other referees wanted to impact a big game between Spurs and Liverpool so much that they messed up a call and then sent them down to 9 men. Because even if when you take away the Curtis Jones foul, you've got the Jota one, which I think, again, it was around the wrong way. So I think the Jota one was, the first one is not really a booking. He hasn't touched the guy. It's just kind of a tangle of legs, like the guy's just tripped himself. It's not a booking. But because he got a booking for it because he thought he tripped him, the second foul Jota does is a definite booking. And therefore, he can't not second book him. So, again, I'm trying to be fair to the refs. With this Kovacic one, I think if the Rice one was the first one, I think he books him. If the second one on Odegaard, if the one on Odegaard is the second one, I think he does send him off and goes, I can't protect him there. He has to go, if that makes sense. Either way, I think it should have been a red card and he didn't. And I think we'll move on from the VAR talk because there wasn't really any other VAR talk. There was one decision, I think, when Rico Lewis made it through on goal. And I've seen some Man City fans have put up and said, why wasn't this an advantage? Because he ran through the defence and then scored. There's 2 reasons, because you can see the ref kind of explain it. He kind of weaves between. To be fair, he doesn't even get tripped. He doesn't get touched. He goes down. The ref is clearly going to give the foul. And he tries to play advantage. But in that moment, when Rico Lewis is on the floor, he handles the ball. Then he blows up. And as he blows up, he walks through the defence beyond that and then kicks it in where David Raya is not even trying to save it. So it wasn't a goal that you scored and it got pulled back. It would have been very different because the defenders would have tried to tackle and then the goalie would have tried to save. But once he handballed it, he had to bring it back for the free kick. Because if he wasn't giving a free kick, he had to give a free kick to Arsenal for the handball. So once he handballed it, now you could see him say it to him. Once you handballed it, I had to bring it back. So I think that decision is fair. And again, I don't know why I'm being so pro referees because they've clearly been very bad this year. But yeah, so let's take away the VAR. Oh, but well, hey, we have to bring it up. That referee in the week is in the UAE refereeing, and he refs for the teams in which the Man City owners are the funders to, which again is a nice little conspiracy caveat that people can talk about. I don't think he thought, oh, they pay me, I have to not give this decision, because I'm sure if he was going to do something like that, he could have just removed a goal or, done something way worse. For example, let Rico Lewis just score, for example, even though he's handled it. So I don't think there's any of that. I don't think there's that much. I think they're inept. I just don't think there's any actual cheating or any conspiracies or anything. I've said it a million times. I think it's just there's some kind of recency bias, I think, that comes with certain teams. But other than that, I think it's just unorganized, and it just needs to be like rugby. It needs to be, here's the black and white rules. let's stick to them, and everyone accepts it. Because I think sometimes they worry about certain parts of it. For example, the Liverpool goal, if they'd brought that back a minute later and said, we got it wrong, it was actually a goal, Spurs would have complained to the ref that, but you carried on, I don't understand, because they want to win the game. But if you'd asked them all personally or after the game, like, what do you think of that? They were like, well, it was a goal, so we can't really complain, So I think they worry about that. Anyway, now I'm officially going to move on from VAR and just get to the game, because I've alluded to earlier that I think it felt different to any other Arsenal game that I've watched. So I'll explain that. We scored a late winner, and the last 2 years since Arteta's kind of gone on the up, and he started to have some really good seasons like last year and then the start of this one. We've scored a lot of late goals like Bournemouth, Aston Villa away, Man United last year, Man United this year. These, I think there was a Spurs goal, but again, it was such massive moments. Whereas this one, I didn't react quite as intensely as the other ones, even though this probably means more than any of them because of the fact that we haven't beaten them in 8 years. In 11 tries, we haven't beaten them. We haven't even drawn with them. And they're our closest rivals as of last year anyway. Like, I'm sure we don't know if they're going to be our closest rival this year. We might come 5th or 6th. They might come 5th or 6th. I doubt it for them. But it's such a big win because it kind of lifts some kind of voodoo that we've kind of created around them. So it's big, but I didn't react. And it was a weird, I did, but I just did. It wasn't the same. And I've had to kind of go back and watch bench cam and some highlights and reaction videos to kind of understand it, because I have a theory that I hate watching Man City play football. Not because it's bad. It's almost too good. They're robotic. They have certain patterns of play that they do, and you can't really stop it. And it's very, I'd say, dull for a neutral. Like, it's just, triangles, passing, and they do the same thing repeatedly until eventually they score. Someone said they described them as like a boa constrictor. They just slowly suck the life out of like a team. And they've done that to us a lot. So they've smashed us a lot. And then the last couple of years, we've actually played really well. Kind of our best games of the seasons have been against them, but we end up losing. Whereas this felt like the games in which they've done to us in the past, where I think there was a Carabao Cup final where Neville just ripped us apart for 60 minutes because they were 3-0 up and then they never attempted to score again, and nor did we ever get the ball back. And it was the worst watch I've probably ever watched. But they do this thing where, as an Arsenal fan, I watch a Man City game, I want them to lose. And they're playing, let's say, Brighton away. I think they played Brighton away last year, maybe the year before. And I was really hopeful that they could drop points. And when I was watching it, it was like nothing really happened. No team were really creating anything. It was just nothing. And then 40 minutes in, I think Bernardo Silva scored. I was just like, oh, okay, 1-0, whatever. And then Brighton just never touched the ball again. And they won 3-0. But nothing really happened. Like, I don't know how to explain it. It wasn't like when you watch Liverpool and you could feel the pressure building. There was no pressure. They just didn't have the ball. Man City had the ball. And they slowly just kind of walked into the net. And it's almost like they hypnotize teams, like lull them into like a false sense of security or something along those lines. Because they've done it to us. And I've watched so many games where I've kind of almost felt sleepy watching it. But at the end of it, I almost wake up and I go, we lost 3-0 there. I don't remember how that happened or why that happened or anything. You just kind of feel flat afterwards because your team didn't show any kind of fight because they couldn't. And I don't know, it's a weird feeling. And this game had the exact same feeling. And it's only in hindsight that you can kind of break it down and realize what actually happened. So I think for a neutral, it's an awful game with a late goal and a bit of drama. For an Arsenal fan, I think we were kind of getting lulled into what we thought was what always happens. I think even in the time, I thought we're going to lose this 2-0. I kept saying it. But I don't know how, because this match just seems even. But that happens a lot. But then when we scored, it felt like, well, I don't understand. I was almost confused. Like, I don't really understand how that's happened. And people say it's a deflected goal. Yeah, but it was a nice move to make those subs at that time. And then the subs all combined because Martinelli came on at half-time for Trossard, who's injured. And then Partey, Tomiyasu, and Havertz all came on. And Partey picks the ball up, long ball. Tomiyasu knocked down the Havertz, rolls it back to Martinelli, deflected in. That's good subs, like that's if you could combine all your subs, that's a well done sub. You have to like applaud the manager kind of. But we win, and then the thing is, after the goal, we keep the ball for about 3 minutes. And again, this is something that Man City do to everyone. When you think, there's going to be a last minute rally from another team and you're hopeful that maybe they get back in the game, they just never get the ball back. And you think, why can't we do that? Because over the last couple of years, Arteta's even spoke about it. He's like, we need to do something about how we protect leads because we start getting deeper, we start clearing it, everyone starts panicking. They're like shanking the ball out for like throw-ins and corners and all this kind of stuff. Whereas this was the opposite. It was so calm. And I think Man City must have probably felt how we've always felt against them, which was we've lost that 1-0, and I don't remember what's happened. But Man City didn't have a shot after the 56th minute. They only had 4 shots. That is the lowest that Man City have done under Pep. It is the lowest anyone's team under Pep has ever had since, I think it was 2010 in La Liga. I don't remember who the team was, but that's a long time. Like, we nullified them. And then so during the game, I was kind of in a haze and then confused, and then it went the opposite way of kind of what it always has. And then you break it down post and you watch a lot of the post game and you kind of look at the tactics and things like that. And what happened was, some of the older coaches have kind of come out and said that was one of the best tactical games that they've ever seen. And again, to us, like, fans, novices, and, I'd like to think I know a decent amount about football. To us, it was just a stalemate, like it's just cagey. That's how we describe it. But they were saying it was so good because every time one of them would do a very minimal change to like a position, the other team would just counter it. And then the other team would try it. And then the other team would counter that. So they were just countering each other back and forth until right near the end. So someone noticed that when Arteta brought on Tomiyasu for Zinchenko, we were trying to play through the lines, which is what Zinchenko does. When he brought on Havertz, he put him basically up front as like a number 9, like a target man. And our game plan through that game was crossfield passes to Jesus, who was playing for the injured Saka on the right. And if you remember, a good way in which Liverpool won the league a couple of years ago was Van Dijk would pick out, and Trent would pick out crossfield passes to Salah, and he'd take it down on his chest, and then he'd be one-on-one, isolated on that far side. But people don't really have the ability to just pick one person out from like 70 yards, and the other one doesn't have the ability to hold that play up on his own on the wing. But we might have found something with this because we don't really have a natural backup to Saka. Jesus at City has played out wide, but we had people like picking out Jesus, and he was bringing it off his chest, his head. He was holding off 2 people at times, and we might have found something with that because we were doing that all game, and he was working decent. It wasn't getting us a goal, but it was progressing us up the field. It was causing them trouble because if you remember last year, City beat us 3 times, and they played long ball for those 3 games because they found a weakness that we jump on the press. Our number 6 jumps into a number 8. There's no number 6. So De Bruyne was just standing still in the number 6, the opposition's number 6 role. And they were literally waiting for the press to jump up. Edison would find out De Bruyne. De Bruyne would give it to Haaland and he'd score. And they did that all 3 games and we had no answer for it. And for this game, we kind of did a bit of the same to them, but it wasn't long ball, but it was crossfield passes and then hold up play. So it was quite like that part was really cool to see the tactical kind of battle. But then to bring on Havertz and change that up and go more direct was really impressive because if you watch right before the goal, Tomiyasu comes on and basically plays the same role as Zinchenko. He doesn't do it the same. He makes runs through the middle as opposed to using the ball. He uses himself. And if you watch the game, they show Arteta and he kind of basically tells Tomiyasu, go narrow, and then points to the box and tells him to run and tells Partey to go long. And he literally just picks him out right through the middle. There's a massive gap. He knocks it down. Hazard does Hazard. Happy retirement, Hazard. Havertz gets the ball, links up, knocks it back. Martinelli finish. And again, the Martinelli finish is a great finish. Like people say it's a deflected. Yeah, but you've got to create those chances. Teams in the past, I could think of a very good Chelsea side that if you looked at their goals, the majority of them were deflected shots because if you're in and around the area and you keep getting shots away, eventually something's going to ricochet in. So it's more of a probability game, and you've got to be in it to win it. You've got to, be in the raffle to win it. So have a shot. Why not? But the scenes, and again, even at the time, I didn't know it felt like muted scenes compared to what we'd seen with Man United and that. But again, watching back, some of the what they say limbs now were crazy. When you see the North Bank and how much it was moving and people with their shirts off, like there's a real atmosphere forming, and the commentators are really not starting to notice it. Even Neville keeps saying it, and our away fans have been great for years. But the home, we've had periods where, you know, the crowd have been half empty. We've had periods where they boo, very quiet, kind of waiting for stuff to happen. There's a nervousness. And again, in that first half, I'm sure Simon would have breached the subject of Raya and Ramsdale because that's his hill to die on, I think. But you could feel that nervousness in the first half. And it was the most nervous I've heard the Emirates in a long time because it's kind of been such a good atmosphere. But you could feel it building because in that second half, you could almost feel a goal was coming, even though there was nothing necessarily clear cut. For example, Jesus got kind of did a couple nice turns in the box, nearly cut it back to Odegaard and Rice. I think Eddie got in once and knocked it wide. And then right before the goal, I think Havertz nearly scored a header from a corner. But he was just kind of a couple inches away. So there's a few things like that, though, just kind of, it was starting to build and there was a bit of a pressure, but it didn't feel like aggressive pressure. It just kind of felt like we were kind of on top that last bit. And again, when you look back in hindsight with the stats, they really did kind of fall off a cliff after about 56 minutes. They kind of got worse and regressed and regressed. And again, that has to be a credit to Arsenal and kind of forcing them back on themselves. But yeah, so the other thing to talk about is obviously Martinelli being back, which is a huge lift because before this game, there was talk of the fact that Rodri and De Bruyne were missing for them. We had Partey, Saka, and Martinelli missing. They also had Stones missing. So both teams are missing 3 crucial players. And both teams have been dealing with it. So we've been dealing without Partey, which has been nice because we got Rice who could play number 6. But at the start of the season, we knew that Partey is the number 6 and then Rice and Odegaard is the number 8 is the perfect midfield for us. We haven't been able to do that much. So Havertz have been having to play 8 on the left. Same with, I think they want to play Timber more so than Zinchenko at the back. He hasn't been available since game 1. And it looks like he's going to be back towards the end of January, early February. For the late kind of run in and hopefully some FA Cup and Champions League action. But yeah, that would be our perfect midfield. So we have been dealing without Partey, and then the last 3 weeks we've been missing Martinelli. And we weren't sure about Saka. And this is that conversation we have to have about Arteta and the fact he's just becoming a liar. Because he played against Lens and he came off injured early, which is never a good sign. And it wasn't the knock that he'd been dealing with before or the Achilles or anything like that because he's got a million injuries. It was a pull of like a hamstring. So pull of hamstrings, no one's back after a week. That's just impossible. Like Trossard, Martinelli got injured, same kind of injury against Everton. And he's back now, and this is 3 weeks later. Trossard did the similar thing a week after Martinelli, or the 3 days later than Martinelli. He came back last week, but he's now picked it up again. So obviously, if you rush people back from these things, it will just keep happening. And if you do get a full tear, it's 3 or 4 months out. It's not worth it. So Martinelli obviously did come back on this game, but Saka, it leaked that he wasn't available. And apparently, from what we found out again in hindsight, was Arsenal found this out. Were very angry about the fact that had come out because they wanted City to think he was available. So then Arsenal leaked that he would be available and that he would be going to England, which is why England picked him. And this is also the issue they're having with England now, because that kind of got people thinking, oh, maybe he's going to be available. And I'd even heard the day of, or the day before, there was rumours that him and Martinelli might start, which seemed bizarre because Martinelli haven't even trained. So none of this made sense. And we knew Saka hadn't trained because obviously he pulled his hamstring 3 or 4 days earlier. That doesn't make sense. So then they take him with them to have a morning walk. I saw them walking, around London or whatever, and Saka's with them. And then when they turn up to the Emirates, players that are injured don't usually turn up on the coach. They're just there. They come and sit in the crowd or whatever. He turned up with the coach and came out in his tracksuit with the whole team. So an hour and 15 minutes before I saw this, and I was like, oh, wow, Saka's in the squad. Cool. Then the team news came out. He's not even on the bench. So they were playing it that hard right through to an hour before kickoff. And they used him as a decoy just to make people, make Man City. And that shows you again how tight these tactics are between Man City and Arsenal. Is usually just be like, yeah, he's not fit. Someone else will play. But the fact that they're trying to get that, pull the wall over each other's eyes that much, it's like, oh no, he might be available. This guy might be available. It's quite interesting to see. But no, he is becoming a liar. And since then, he had to report to England after that, even though he didn't play or it wasn't in the squad. And then England assessed him and have sent him back. But apparently they did that because they felt that Arsenal were up to something, essentially, because they told him they were fit, so they picked him, and then they didn't play him and said he wasn't fit. So England, I think, were just essentially checking like what is going on, which is funny because obviously that never happens. Because if you watch before every international break, Man United pull 3 players, City pull a few players, and they just give their players a couple of weeks break, and we don't. And we've said for ages, especially Saka, who plays every minute. I wish we'd just fake an injury like last 10 minutes of the game before the international break. Just give him a rest. So this has kind of got the rest. But the other thing that's been nice was, well, not nice because it could be a longer injury, was Trossard went off at half time. And it looks like he is injured and he's not going to the Belgium camp. And then the third one is Saliba. And we'll get to that because I just want to talk about Martinelli because the story that Arteta told after the game, which was essentially that all week he had been saying since the Everton game, he'd said to Arteta, I'll be ready for the City game. And Arteta obviously speaks to the medics and stuff, and they're like, no, he won't, because the hamstring's 3-4 weeks. That's 2.5-3 weeks. It's too early. And apparently they put him in the squad because he said to Arteta, I should be on the bench because I could do 5 minutes or something like this. So he puts him on the bench, and he said afterwards at halftime, Trossard was hurt. So he turned around, and Martinelli was in his full kit. Apparently, he stripped off and said, "Boss, I'm gonna play." And again, this is like movie stuff because that it shouldn't really make sense, should it? Really, like if you think about like if he's injured, the medic said no, by the way, and they went against it. So again, if he had gone on and tore something, we'd be talking about how badly ran this is. But instead, they went with kind of a feeling, and it worked out. It worked out perfectly again, and that's what this game is so confusing. Is everything seemed to work out perfectly as far as didn't have to play Saka, and we won. Martinelli isn't fit, ended up playing a whole half and scored and didn't get injured. Trossard went off injured, but we're hoping it's a minor one. He's not even going away with international, so he can rest. And then the last one was the game that Saliba had. So he had 98% pass completion and 100% duels won and headed clearances won, which is crazy stat to do in the Premier League, but then a crazier stat to do against Man City, and then a crazier stat that Haaland took it as a challenge. Because again, we said last year, he played a half against Saliba. He played against Rob Holding last year, and he stayed on Rob Holding. And when Saliba came on that one time, he tried him out once, and then he moved and put himself on Gabriel, and he got a lot more joy. And I think Gabriel is very underrated. I think he's as good as Saliba, but there is something to Saliba. But on this game, Haaland tried. He put himself on Saliba, and he kind of went, "Let's test it. Let's see who is stronger, who's bigger, who's faster, whatever it is." And there's a couple clips, especially the one where Haaland's running through, and they're both kind of coming together at once, chasing the ball, and Haaland falls, and he falls badly, and Saliba just runs off. There's another duel that they kind of come out of, and Saliba kind of takes it around a couple players and knocks on. It was so good. It was such a good performance to do that. But when you're man marking Haaland, in all fairness, I'll give it credit as well. Craig Dawson for Wolves the week before did a very similar job. It didn't look quite as good, and his duels weren't as 100%, and his pass completion wasn't as good. But he man marked Haaland, and again, there's been a joke for the last couple of years of how do you stop Haaland? And people have said you actually mark him, because if you watch games, his goals come from where he's just in a massive pocket of space where people have just let him drift into nowhere. I think if you man mark him, it's a problem. Like, it's a problem for any player. Like if you man mark any player other than maybe Messi, it's going to be a problem. And maybe I don't think people are saying have they figured out Haaland? I don't think they figured out Haaland. I think they've just figured out you need to man mark really good players. And again, if you man mark really good players, there's going to be holes for other players. So Haaland's going to create a lot of holes, similar to the NFL when they double up on star receivers. There's going to be holes for tight ends and small pocket receivers to do stuff. And again, if you do that with Haaland, I'm sure Foden's goals are going to go up. I'm sure Alvarez's goals are certainly going to go up. But I think people maybe started to go, it's probably worth just marking him and seeing what happens with the rest, because Haaland's such head and shoulders above everyone else in world football as far as finishing and stuff like that. But I would like to see that. I'd love to see like a slight downfall just for the sake of the Premier League. And again, this win was a great win for the Premier League because, again, City have been back by 9 points with 10 games to go, like they were last year. 8 games, 8 points, 8 games or something like that. They still win the league. They always do. Like Liverpool were miles ahead, weren't they, at that time, and they lost by a point. So I don't think this necessarily means anything, but it's a good sign now after 8 games, they've lost 2. So the core of their games they've lost. And there's 2 unbeaten teams with Arsenal and Spurs. I think Spurs are a lot better than I thought they were going to be. As far as winning the league, I don't want to, obviously, I'm touching wood. I don't think so. And it's strictly because we've been there last year where people were ruling us out because they said the squad's too thin, they won't last. And we got all the way to like 8, 7, 6 games to go. And then it started to show, Partey went out and then all these other, Zinchenko was out. Saliba went out, was the big one. And then we had nothing defensively. Ben White was playing with the torn hamstring last 3 games. It was just too small a squad, and that's why we went and got Timber. And now when you look at our squad and you look at Kiwi or Timber, Tomiyasu as the backups for the back 4, and the back 4 can play anywhere across the back 4. Spending 100 million to essentially back up Partey with Rice. It's not a true backup, but we have 2 world-class people in number 6, and at the worst case scenario, similar to this Man City, you could play Jorginho there, and Rice could be left 8 and can double pivot and help. So these are all been done over the summer, because we got so close, but we needed that depth to get us through. Tottenham, I would say, have a smaller depth than we had last year. So if we struggled with depth, and people said we were going to struggle with depth, and they were right, I don't think they can last a whole season this way. The only benefit they have is they've got no European football. They're already out of the Carabao Cup. They could go out the FA Cup immediately, for example. And you think what Leicester did, they did that by kind of having 7 days to prepare for every game and, playing with good vibes, essentially. And that's what they are. That's what Tottenham are at the minute, is they're kind of a good vibe team with their manager. Because that Luton game they played, Luton are definitely going to get hit for 6 or 7 at some point, because Tottenham in that first 20 minutes could have been 4 or 5-0 up, and they just weren't because of bad finishing from mainly Richarlison. But they also went down to 10 men. They made hard work of some of these matches that they've had so far that have been on the easier side. And I don't really kind of play to the idea that they've had a really easy really easy start, because they have played Man United. They've played Arsenal away. So Man United home, Arsenal away. They have played the bottom 4. They played Liverpool at home. So realistically, if you've played Liverpool, Arsenal, Man United in your first 7 games before Luton, let's say, and then 3 of the bottom 4, it's kind of a bit of both, isn't it? Like, it's kind of 50-50, because Arsenal, for example, we've played some big games, but they've all been at home. We played Tottenham at home. We played Man City at home. We played Man United at home. We've had awkward ones like Everton and Palace away. We've had Forest at home, which is a favourable tie. We've had Fulham at home, which is a favourable tie, but we drew that. So it's kind of been, I don't know. I don't think they necessarily I don't prescribe to the idea they've had an easy start, but I do think maybe depth, if they get an injury to Son, and maybe Sarr or Basuma, like Basuma's, out for a game now, they could have some trouble, right? A big injury to Romero, who's coming in for him. Whereas that's why we were last year. Saliba got injured, we had Holding, and all of a sudden every goal came through that hole. So I think it's too long a season to do it. But again, anything can happen, because Leicester did it, and they did it with a very, very small squad. They just did it. But they also did it on a time when Man City were very down, which is ironic, because what if this is that 1 year again, 5, 6 years later, 7 years later, where Man City are really down, so anyone can win it? And that year happened to be Leicester, even though Tottenham were very close and we were very close. Could this year be the year that Brighton win it, for example, because Man City are out of it, and then all the other teams stumble trying to, pick up the scraps? So it will be an interesting season. Before I move on from that, I just wanted to say that Saliba as well isn't going away with the French team because of a toe injury, which again, as long as it isn't a bad injury, and he apparently played with it, so it can't be too bad. He's also at the training ground resting this week with Saka and Trossard. So these are good things. It makes me feel more comfortable that when we come back, we might have a full squad ready for Chelsea away, which is another big game, because Chelsea seem to have found some kind of form. Because, eventually it was going to happen, was it? Because when you're getting crazy XG, you're just missing chances, and they're not conceding many. Eventually that's gonna work out, if they start putting away some of these chances, because defensively is the hardest thing to clean up, and they seem defensively quite solid. So Chelsea will come good, and I think that game away at Chelsea will be tough for us. But again, we'll be covering that next week. So next week we'll have Joe and Simon in the house, obviously barring anyone being sick or anything like that. Because we're not doing the previews this week because there's no games. It's international break, as I've kind of spoken about with being happy about Arsenal players not going away. So next week we'll kind of get back to prediction leagues. I'll let you know who won this past week. So it'll be 2 weeks old at that point, well, a week and a half. And then we'll preview the upcoming games, including the Arsenal-Chelsea game. Maybe any kind of information that came out of the international break, or probably some kind of breaking news out of VAR because they've done something wrong somewhere and they found it. So hopefully no VAR talk next week because it was international break. Maybe no Havertz talk because it was international break. And maybe just a strong Premier League preview with an Arsenal-Chelsea preview. Because I think once we're back next week, there's about 4 weeks of every 3 days. And then there's another international break in October. No, November. And then I think right through then till March, there's no international. But there's just FA Cup weekends in January and February, I think. So it's going to be pretty thick and heavy after these international breaks. But this next 4 weeks is going to be pretty intense. So we'll be previewing Premier League / Champions Leagues every week and then reviewing Premier League, Champions League and previewing other parts. So it's going to be quite intense after that. And again, we might look into doing a Premier League pod and an Arsenal pod as 2 separate podcasts. So if you're not an Arsenal fan, you can listen to the Premier League preview ones. And if you're an Arsenal fan, you can listen to both. But yeah, we'll see you next week. You can follow us on by TBA on all forms of social, or just search the brothers or for Joe and I. Simon Miller is Simon Miller 316. Check out his newest videos. I'm sure there'll be a video up today somewhere on What Culture or on Simon Miller about AEW and NXT. We'll be back. Make sure you follow Gunners or Us on all forms of socials, not socials, on podcasts. Make sure you subscribe, download the episode 1 million times because it all helps. Listen to it, tell your friends, get 5 people to download it. And we will be back next Wednesday with another Gunners or Us podcast. We will see you then. Bye-bye.